I'm Steve, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm back for a video from my experience, step 1 of the 12 steps of recovery. Step 1 is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol or whatever your drug of choice is, and that our lives had become unmanageable. For each of these steps as we go through, I'm going to point out some suggested reading, and for this step, the suggested reading is, for each step, there's going to be, I'm going to refer to reading about the step in this book called The 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, commonly known as the 12 and 12. That's its nickname, 12 and 12. This is the big book. So there's the 12 and 12. The suggested reading in the big book are 2 chapters. One of them is one of the prefaces, and it's called The Doctor's Opinion, which is basically a doctor, a medical doctor, describing alcoholism as a disease and his experience with people getting recovery via this program. And the other suggested reading is chapter 3 called More About Alcoholism, which details the disease and its manifestations and the suffering and what have you. And then, of course, step 1 in the 12 and 12. Now, when I worked step 1 with my sponsor, he asked me to grab a highlighter and read those 2 suggested readings in the big book, The Doctor's Opinion and More About Alcoholism, and grab the highlighter and highlight when you can relate to something where it sounds like that has been your experience, like hangovers, blackouts, getting in trouble, getting arrested, the sickness, the depression, incomprehensible demoralization, as they call it, things like that. Oh, and particularly efforts to try to control it or quit on your own that don't work. That's an important hallmark of the disease. And so if you end up highlighting a whole bunch of stuff and you're honest with yourself in that reading, and you're like, wow, that sounds like me. I remember when I read the stuff, I was tripped out. I was astounded at, wow, how do they know this stuff? How do they know about me? Like, this is my life. When I got done reading that, there was no doubt that I was an alcoholic. I just knew it. And unfortunately, the first time that I ever read it, when I was in my 20s, just out of curiosity, I wasn't ready to get sober yet. But I knew I was an alcoholic at that point. Anyways, I digress. When I worked step 1 with my sponsor, that's one of the things that I did, and we went over that together. Another thing that he had me do, or suggested that I do, was write out my entire drinking history. Pen to paper, writing. It's very cathartic, and I don't mean typing on a keyboard. I mean I wrote with a pen on a paper my whole drinking history from when I started as a teenager all the way up to when I hit my bottom at age 36. Which is, 20 years or so of hard drinking. And when I wrote about it, there ended up being instances and examples of powerlessness where I'm getting in trouble with it and it's causing me a lot of suffering, and I try to control it and I try to quit on my own, and it doesn't work. And then unmanageability is the trouble that it got me into. Things in my life, situations in my life, like getting in trouble at work, making my wife cry, losing friends, physical illness, depression, getting arrested, that's a good one. All of these things, doing stupid stuff in a blackout that I had to call people the next day and apologize for, things like that. Those are examples of unmanageability. These are unmanageability to me is bad stuff that happens in my life that I don't want to have happen, but it happens as a direct result of my drinking. So powerlessness and unmanageability. When I wrote my drinking history out, boom, there it was in black and white. I was powerless over alcohol. I couldn't control it. I couldn't quit. And my life was becoming unmanageable because all this bad stuff was happening to me as a direct result of my drinking. And so what happened for me was I finally crashed and burned and hit my bottom the morning after my best friend's wedding, where I made a total ass of myself, and I had had enough. Like I said, I was physiologically ill and the most depressed I had ever been in my life. and I was ready. I said to myself, how much longer can this go on before I just kill myself? And I just felt like I was so sick that I could die from it. And that was my bottom. And at that point, my white flag went up, and I gave up the fight. A big part of step one is giving up the fight, because I had tried for years to control it. Like, I gave up hard alcohol for a while. I'm only going to drink beer and wine, which I still managed to get very drunk on a regular basis, even without hard alcohol. I also tried, I'm only going to drink on weekends. Well, I was obliterated pretty much all weekend, every weekend. And then during the week, I would obsess about when's it going to be Friday so I can drink again. So I tried that. I also tried no drinking before noon. That was a good one. No drinking in the morning, because if I drink in the morning, then I'm really a loser. Then I'm really an alcoholic. Well, there came a point where I started drinking in the morning during my active alcoholism. All things I tried to get control, to quit. None of them worked. I even tried giving up drinking entirely one time. Swore it off. I'm all done. Not going to drink anymore. I lasted 10 weeks, and then I was drunk again. This is by my own human willpower and ambition before I got into recovery. And so when I hit my bottom, I had to give up the fight, and I had to realize that the things that I was trying to get control, the tools that I was using to get control of my drinking, were not working. And as a matter of fact, not only were they not working, but my drinking was getting worse while I was trying to control it. Because it's a progressive disease. The disease of alcoholism and addiction is progressive. The longer you stay active in it, the worse it gets. And so no one can define for you whether or not you're an alcoholic. Your doctor may try to tell you, or he may tell you to try to help you, but in the program of recovery, no one's going to pull you inside and say, guess what? You're an alcoholic. It's up to you to determine that for yourself, and your sponsor and people in AA can help you determine if you're an alcoholic or not. There's a questionnaire. It's called Is AA for You? And it has, I think, 20 questions maybe. And it's all questions around alcohol and your drinking habits. And I'll never forget that when I filled that out, I got 100 on it. I answered yes to every single question. And at the end of the pamphlet, it says, if you answered yes to 4 or 5 of these questions, you may have a problem with alcohol and you may want to investigate Alcoholics Anonymous. I answered yes to every single one of them. So I got 100 on that test. I'm definitely an alcoholic, and I don't have any doubt in my mind. But I'm a grateful alcoholic, and I'll get to that. So kind of the opposite of working an effective step one is if you have what we call reservations, which are, yeah, I'm going to give up drinking for a while and maybe I'll check out some meetings, but if such and such happens down the road, then I'm going to have to drink. Like, if I go to a wedding or if I go on a Caribbean vacation, well, you can't do those things and not drink. So I'm going to have to drink when I get there. But for today, I won't drink and I'll go to meetings and what have you. That's called a reservation. That means I'm not going to drink now, but if such and such happens down the road, then I'll have to drink, because of course I'll have to drink. You can't have any reservations, or at least I couldn't. I had to let go of all those reservations, because I had those thoughts that told me, well, if such and such happens down the road, I'm going to have to drink. How am I not going to drink if someone dies, or if I go on a vacation, or I have to celebrate, or whatever? I let go of those reservations, and the tool that we use to do that is the concept of one day at a time. You may hear that a lot, and you'll certainly see it on the walls at meetings if you go to them, a little sign that says one day at a time. It's a huge principle of recovery, meaning that we keep it in today. My sobriety is structured literally by the time I get up in the morning, wake up from sleep and get up, to the time I go to bed and go to sleep at night. That's the chunk of time that I focus on, is one day. How am I going to stay sober today? I don't think about, when I was new in recovery, it was stress to me. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about next week, next month, next year. We focus on today. What are you going to do today to not drink? And there's a whole bunch of tools that we can get into to help you to not drink for one day. But that's how we do it, one day at a time. especially in the beginning. I still do it one day at a time, but especially in the beginning, focusing on one 24-hour chunk is how it works. So that's my experience with step one.